Hey friends, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Haley and I just like to talk about all things reading and bookish content, so thank you so much for clicking onto this video. For today's video, I figured I would hop on the bandwagon because I definitely have FOMO and do the mid-year book freakout tag just like everyone else. So before we get started with the official questions for the mid-year tag, I just wanted to go through a few update items just to kind of recap where I'm at so far. And honestly, I can't believe that we're already halfway through the year and it's time to do this mid-year tag. So that being said, let's do a few quick updates. So as I mentioned in my recent video, I had been in a little bit of a book slump and kind of a life slump. I was having a really hard time just wanting to record content, to edit, and honestly, I have been struggling a little bit with still finding time to edit. I have been recording a lot of exciting content, but I really just need time to be able to sit down and edit that and get it uploaded for you all. So I am working really hard to do better about that. And part of that is that I have been uploading on Mondays, and I think moving forward from now, I'm going to upload on Wednesdays and Sundays. When I first started the channel, I was uploading twice a week, and I was really excited with the content I was uploading, and I was really enjoying the engagement that those videos were getting. But now that I've slowed down and I've only been posting on Mondays, I'm having a couple of issues with that. So the first issue that I'm having is that I feel like I have a lot of videos that I want to put out and I'm having to pick and choose between the topics, which is taking some of the fun out of it for me. I just want to be able to sit down and record and have a good time and then edit those videos and upload them. And then the second issue is that I feel like Mondays are a little too infrequent for achieving my goal with this channel, which ultimately, this is just a personal passion project to get myself out of my comfort zone, but I really do enjoy connecting with other people in this community that are reading, so I really want to increase the number of videos that I'm posting. That way I can continue to post both bookish content and journaling content and put plenty of that out so that I'm able to share all the things that I'm passionate about with you all. So moving forward, I am planning to upload on Wednesdays and Sundays, which is very exciting. And I do already have some really fun videos in the works for you all. So there will be a vacation reading vlog coming up, a second new releases reading vlog. I'm testing out a very popular book subscription box, so look out for that video. And then I'm also going to be doing a mid-year reset in my journal. So those videos will be uploaded very soon, so definitely watch this space. Keep an eye on the channel for those videos. And finally, the last update that I wanted to give, which may be a little bit of a longer one, is just an update on my reading so far this year. So I use Storygraph, Fable, and Goodreads to track my reading, which I know seems a little bit excessive, but I really like engaging with different people on each of those apps. I'm part of some book clubs on Fable that I like to participate in. I have a lot of friends on my Goodreads, and then I really like the analytics that Storygraph provides, so that's why I use all three. But I just wanted to pop up a few graphics for where I'm at in terms of my reading as of today. And I do have the same annual book goal set on all three apps, so they're all set to 150 books for the year, which I honestly am not feeling a lot of pressure about that number. For me, I'm happy to be reading whether I achieve that or not, but I do believe right now I am on pace to achieve that goal by the end of the year. So on Storygraph, it does reflect that I've read 83 books this year, and that number should actually be 82. The reason that it reflects 83 is because the very first book that I finished for the year on Storygraph, I actually finished on New Year's Eve. So I finished it prior to the start of the year, but I didn't start using Storygraph until the start of the year. And when I tried to enter the data for that book, I accidentally entered it on the first day of the year. So I just haven't tried to go back in and figure out how to fix that, if that's even possible. But honestly, it doesn't bother me that much because I do have other apps, so I know where I'm at in terms of my actual reading goal. So then Goodreads and Fable will both reflect that I have read 82 books this year, which is honestly pretty crazy. I feel like that is a huge number of books to have read by the middle of the year. I honestly feel like I continue to read more and more every year, and that isn't necessarily meaning that the quality of the books that I'm reading is going down. So I am absolutely excited about that. One thing that I do really like in the context of reading goals and quality versus quantity is that I have been watching some of Kristen and Maddie's videos recently. If you're familiar with them, they are sisters that talk about books together, and one of them always says good books will always be good. So I know part of their goal for the year was to set a lower reading goal so that they could focus on quality over quantity. And I really, really like that vibe of good books are always going to be good. And hopefully, we still have a lot of time to get to read all the great books that we want to read. So there's no reason to rush or feel bad when you can't start a new release as soon as it comes out, or if you've had a book on your TBR for a little while, it's still going to be good when you get to it, whether that's next week or next month, and I really love that mentality. So I wanted to share a few more of the analytics available from Storygraph with you, and I do want to be mindful that these will include Nettle and Bone, which was that book that I accidentally logged as my first read this year, which is inaccurate, but I feel like considering the number of books that I read, it shouldn't be skewing the data that much. It's just going to be included in my total page count for the year and things like that. So just keep that in mind as we go through these. So Storygraph does reflect that I've read 83 books this year, but that adds up to 31,475 pages, which that sounds insane to me. My average time to finish a book is 5 days, which I feel like is pretty reasonable considering the number of books that I read. I would feel like you would have to read much faster than that to be able to accomplish this number of books. So I feel like 5 days to finish a book is a pretty reasonable reading time. As far as fiction and nonfiction books go, 82% of the books that I've read this year so far have been fiction, and 18% of the books that I've read have been nonfiction. I do feel like that nonfiction portion has grown this year compared to previous years. I would always have said in the past, I'm not someone who enjoys nonfiction or self-help books, but I do feel like I've read a lot more memoirs and self-help books this year, and I actually am really enjoying them. So I would say don't be afraid to try nonfiction, even if you're someone who historically has not read it. There are some really, really great gems within nonfiction, so I'm excited that I've expanded my reading taste in that way. As far as genres go, I'm pretty much all over the map, but my top three are romance, fantasy, and literary fiction. And I feel like it's a little unfair because, like, literary fiction, contemporary fiction, they're separate from each other, and I tend to lump those things together, but those are my top three as of right now. And then for format right now, I have read 30% of my total have been digital, so ebooks. 46% have been audiobooks, and 24% have been physical print books. And I have tried to be really good about making sure that I am logging the correct edition when I'm putting my books into Storygraph, so that should be pretty accurate. And I do feel like that accurately reflects my reading when I think about what I have read so far. Over half of what I've read have been books, so either reading them physically or on my Kindle. That's over half of what I've read, and then just under half are my audiobooks. And so far, my top three most read authors this year are Jane Austen. So I did actually read all of Jane Austen's published works. If you're interested in a ranking video or hearing my thoughts about that, please let me know in the comments. I would be happy to share that. I've been wanting to get into her books for a long time, and I've had them on my physical TBR, and so I was very excited that I achieved the goal of reading all of her works this year. I did consume them through audiobook, and I found that that helped me a lot to be more engaged with the story and to understand the characters and their motives better. So I would recommend audiobooks if you have found that you've tried to read her works and you've struggled with actually reading them. I found that very helpful for me. So I have Jane Austen, and then Mira Grant is my second author that I've read the most of. Mira Grant writes a lot of scientific horror, and I really enjoy her writing. So if you haven't read any of her stuff, I highly recommend it. And then, of course, Emily Henry is my third highest read author this year. I feel like Emily Henry has been up there for me last year and this year because I didn't get introduced to her books until last year, and I've just finally caught up on all of her works this year. So she'll probably drop down in the rankings as the year goes on just because I've read everything that she's written so far, but I'm not surprised that she's up there. And lastly, my average rating, which I only have 54 reviews in Storygraph, even though I've read, I said this has 83 books in it. So I just haven't felt strongly about some books, or I've been conflicted about their ratings, so I haven't entered them. I probably will try to go back and enter ratings after having reflected upon those books if they're not nonfiction. So I don't tend to rate a ton of nonfiction because if they're impactful for me, I tend to just rate them 5 stars. Or if they're self-help, I tend to not rate them because I think that's a very personalized experience. So those probably will not get ratings from me, but any others that are missing ratings, I probably will go back in and fill them out. But so far with what I've logged, my average rating for books this year is 4.29 stars, which I feel like, considering that I've been in a book slump and a reading slump, that is not bad. I feel like that means I've had some really, really good reads this year. And I honestly don't think I've had any 1 or 2 star reads so far this year. I'd have to go back and confirm that, but nothing is coming to the top of my mind so far, which honestly is a huge win because I don't think I've had to DNF many books. I DNF'd one book for a book club, and that was The Buddha's Words, and I think that was just because of the way that I chose to consume that book. So honestly, I'm pretty impressed with that we've made it halfway through the year and my average rating is 4.29. Maybe I'm just being really generous this year, I don't know, but I feel like that does mean that I've had some pretty good reads so far. And the final piece of update that I wanted to do before we get into the book tag is to discuss my 25 and 2025. At the beginning of this year, I did post a video going through 25 books that I really wanted to get to this year in 2025. So I just wanted to take a quick second to take a look at what I have and have not gotten to. So I will try to put those 25 books up on the screen. And so far, out of these 25 books, I have read 7 of them. So I feel like that's not a bad start. I still have 18 to go, but when I'm averaging about 15 to 16 books per month, when I'm not in a reading slump, I feel like getting through those 18 books will be very doable. I actually have been thinking about making a vlog where I try to read more of my 25 for 25. So if you're interested in seeing me try to tackle those books and get as many done as possible in a week, or maybe in a 24-hour reading challenge, please let me know in the comments because I think that would be super fun to make that type of video. Alright, so that is all the recap that I wanted to get to before we could officially get into the mid-year book freakout tag. So without further ado, let's jump right into the questions. So our first question is the best book that I've read so far in 2025. And I really want to try not to have recency bias with this because I have read a book that I just rated 5 stars and I do think is one of the best books that I've read so far this year. And that book was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you saw my review posted for this, I literally said that rating this 5 stars and reading this is definitely going to shift how I rate books moving forward. But I don't want to get too into my review and my rating of this book and how I felt about it because I will go more in depth in that in my upcoming new releases reading vlog. So keep an eye out for that because this is one of the books that I read in that video and you can hear me gush about all my great feelings that I had about this book if you check that out. But I will say this is one of my favorites that I've read so far this year and I just happen to be so lucky that it is so recent before filming this video. And then a book that really stands out to me from earlier this year would actually be The Sword of Kaigen. I read that back in January and it was an instant 5-star for me. I absolutely fell in love with the author's writing style and with the characters that they created, and I'm really, really excited to get into more of their works. I do have Blood Over Brighthaven on my TBR. I have an ebook version of that, so I really, really want to read that soon. And I would definitely say that when I think about the books that have stood out to me so far this year, those two are definitely at the top of the list for me. Up next, I have the best sequel that I've read so far in 2025. And I do feel a little bit like I'm losing my mind here because normally I am a very series heavy person, but I don't think that I have read that many series so far in 2025. So let me take a quick look back through my reading history. Okay, this is definitely why it's a problem to read this many books in a year, because I literally thought that I finished this series last year, but I did finish the Poppy War trilogy at the beginning of this year. Overall, that is a 5-star series for me. I would also say that Apprentice to the Villain would be a really great contender here. I started that series this year with Assistant to the Villain, and I really wanted to continue it. I will say I don't feel like it's a groundbreaking, like earth-shattering series, but as far as cozier series go, I really, really do enjoy that one. And then the most recent addition to a series that I've read was Sunrise on the Reaping, which was the newest installment in the Hunger Games series. And although it was a prequel to the original trilogy, I will say that I think that falls into this category, and I did really enjoy that book. So I would say all 3 of those series really would be great sequels that I've read this year. Up next, we have a new release that I haven't read yet, but I want to. And for this question, I'm only going to consider new releases that have come out up till this point. And the new release that I have that I am most excited to get to is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. Everything that I've read by V.E. Schwab has been very, very highly rated for me, and I've really enjoyed the different genres that V.E. Schwab has explored. So I would say that books like Vicious and Vengeful are very different from The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So I'm very excited to read Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and I will say that this book is one of the books that's come out so far this year where I've read the synopsis and I've immediately been like, I want to read that so bad. So this is one of those times where I'm trying to remind myself, good books will always be good books, so I need to take my time, finish what I'm currently reading, and then I can jump into this as soon as I'm ready to give it the time that it deserves. But I would say this is the new release that I'm most excited about that's out right now. And then just for the sake of sharing, I will say the new release that I'm most excited about that hasn't come out yet is going to be R.F. Kuang's Calabasas. I have loved everything I've read by R.F. Kuang. Obviously, we were just talking about the Poppy War trilogy, and I've also read Yellow Face. Babel is still on my physical TBR, so that's one that I'm hoping to get to soon. I'm thinking I might want to pair that with the same time that I do my summer ween reading, just because it is more of a dark academia setting, so I feel like it really might help me to embrace more of a fall vibe, which, to be perfectly honest with you guys, I am already ready for fall. It is so hot out there. But my most anticipated upcoming new release is going to be Calabasas, which is R.F. Kuang's new book that comes out later this year. Now, the next question is my biggest disappointment this year. And I think this one is going to be hard for me to put my finger on because I don't want to cloud any judgment about books that I read when I was feeling extremely slumpy. So let me think for a minute. Gosh, this is a really hard category for me. I would say that most likely Onyx Storm would be my biggest disappointment. However, I already was kind of off the bandwagon by the time that Iron Flame came out. We had already pre-ordered Onyx Storm, and both myself and my husband had read the series, so we wanted to just go ahead and get the book and read it. But I honestly just think that Rebecca Yarros is not an author that I want to support, and I also just really don't enjoy her writing anymore. I think Fourth Wing was fun and I was really sucked into that. And then since then, I just feel like the books are being written by ChatGPT, which is definitely a hot take. I'm not accusing her of doing that, but I'm saying that's how they read. They read as if they're being written by AI, and I don't think they're being crafted well. And I also think that Rebecca Yarros has done a lot that is just disrespectful, especially with the Gallic language and words that she has borrowed to put into her books without any real knowledge or research into them, as well as the other statements that she's made that I just don't personally agree with. So I would say that was disappointing to me, but I didn't have high expectations going into that book. Of course, you always hope when you've dedicated that much time into a series that it will improve, but I honestly didn't have high hopes going into that one, so I really wasn't let down. But I will say that overall, just Rebecca Yarros and her books have been a disappointment to me. Up next, we have what has been the biggest surprise for me so far, and I would honestly say that the biggest surprise for me has been reading The Third Gilmore Girl. I did read this book as an audiobook, and it is read by Kelly Bishop, and that's who this biography is about. It is an autobiography, and I really think this is where I realized just how much I really enjoy nonfiction and biographies and learning about how other people see the world in their own words and seeing that through the lens of actual people. I know that might sound like, duh, of course that's interesting. You enjoy reading and experiencing different stories, but I've always felt like biographies or autobiographies would just be too dry for me to really be intrigued by. And I was honestly really moved by this book. So I think that was the biggest surprise for me so far this year. All right, the next question is, who is one of my new favorite authors? And I will say I did read both of the people that come to mind last year, but I've really read so much more of their work this year, and it's really shown me how much I enjoy their work, and that would be R.F. Kuang and Mira Grant. So I would say both of them are really rising to be auto-by authors for me, and they've really shown me the type of writing that I prefer to read. I do have a hard time reading other books in similar genres after reading their books and feeling like they are crafted as well as those two authors craft books. Another new author to me is Annabelle Monaghan, which, as I've mentioned, I'm not normally a contemporary romance girly. That's just not always my vibe. But I did recently pick up an Annabelle Monaghan book for the first time, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I had a really fun time reading it, so I definitely will continue to read her books, and I actually have hauled some of them recently. So I would say those are the new authors to me that are on my radar right now. Now, the next question is newest fictional crush, and I honestly don't get like super attached to people when I'm reading books, even if they're like romance books. I don't feel like my heart is racing or like I get butterflies when they say stuff. Honestly, I cringe pretty easily, so I wouldn't say that I am like falling for a book boyfriend or a book girlfriend often. But I will say, when I think newest fictional crush, I would have to think of the main characters in Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And the two main characters that you follow are Joan Goodwin and Vanessa Ford. And I love these two characters for a lot of reasons. I really fell in love with their story throughout Atmosphere, but I also just think all the women in Atmosphere are such badasses, and I love the description of these women's ability to stand up for themselves and prove just how powerful they are and how knowledgeable they are, and to become the first women that are able to go into space. And so I just really was moved by that story, and it really definitely gave me a girl crush on all the amazing women that Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote about. And I know that there are probably so many real role models that fall into that category as well. So it's definitely a topic that I'm inspired to learn more about. So the next question is a book that made me cry. And I actually have a couple books that come to mind for this. So I mentioned earlier that The Sword of Kaigen was one of the first 5-star reads that I had this year. And I actually made the mistake of reading that book while I was on my lunch break at work. and something pretty unexpected and traumatic happened, and I found myself fighting back, going into literal sobs because I was not expecting the turn that that book was gonna take, and it really caught me off guard, and I felt very attached to the characters in that book by the time that that happened. So that's one that like got a huge emotional reaction from me. And then the other one, which I actually think is really interesting because I wouldn't have expected this, is Braiding Sweetgrass. If you're not familiar with Braiding Sweetgrass, it is a story told by a botanist who is an indigenous individual, and she shares a lot of indigenous wisdom and teachings and how that applies to our world and how we can better coexist with our world. And there were just some parts that she shared towards the end of the book where she was drawing some parallels between different things happening in the world that really kind of hit me pretty hard, and it was very unexpected. Just the imagery that she was using and the parallels that she was drawing really impacted me, and had it elicited a very emotional reaction from me that I wasn't expecting. So I really, really enjoyed that book, and I thought it was beautiful, and I do feel like I really took away a lot from that I wasn't necessarily expecting to. I thought it was going to be a really great book, and that's why I had it on my physical TBR, but I just wasn't expecting it to impact me that emotionally, and it really, really did. And the next question is a book that made me happy, which I honestly feel like I read a lot of darker reads, and this question is making me reflect on that a little bit. I don't think I read a ton of happy, feel good, warm, fuzzy books, so I do need to make a better effort to do that, to give myself a break sometimes. But the first book that comes to mind is Remarkably Bright Creatures, and I do think that this book was very bittersweet in some ways, but honestly, by the end of that book, the journeys that all the characters had gone on that had brought them together and set them up to be in the place that they were in by the end of the book was so sweet and so heartwarming. And so I would definitely say that that was a book that made me very happy. And it's hard to not be happy when you're reading a book where one of the narrators is a sassy octopus. So I definitely enjoyed that book. It definitely had some sad, sweet moments, but I really enjoyed it, and it definitely brought a smile to my face more than once. Now, the next question is my favorite book to movie adaptation so far this year, and I'll be honest with you that I don't really keep up with movies, and I personally don't watch a lot of movies. So I honestly don't go to movie theaters. Like, I'll just watch stuff when it's available to stream. So I honestly haven't been keeping up with a lot of adaptations this year, but I will say one that I'm very excited to watch hopefully soon is the Murderbot series, because that is being adapted to a television series on Apple TV, I believe, and that is a series of novellas that I have been reading and I have really enjoyed. So I'm hoping to get into that one, and hopefully that will be my favorite book adaptation. Now, the next question is the most beautiful book that I've bought this year, which I honestly don't feel like I've been buying a ton of special editions this year, so I haven't gotten anything super fancy. I honestly don't feel like I have a great book for this question, but I will show you two that I find really satisfying that I bought, and I feel like one of them I bought definitely because of how it looked. So I would say that this one, Someone You Can Build a Nest In, is one where the cover definitely drew me in. It does have sprayed edges, but I don't care all that much about that. But the cover art definitely kind of spoke to me and made me want to pick this up. And then another book where I really like the cover, this is one that I've been excited to read, is The Spirit Bares Its Teeth. And I don't know if you can see it super well, but it does have a lot of reflective qualities to it. And the last question for today's mid-year book freakout tag is, what books do I absolutely need to read before the end of 2025? And so I'm a little hard pressed not to just say like my entire physical TBR, which I've got them on the cart back here, and then I've also got some on the shelf that's just outside of the camera angle. I still have quite a few unread books. If you've been here since I posted my initial welcome to the channel, I have a problem, so many unread books video. Yes, I do still have a lot of them. I am still trying to work down my physical TBR, but I have still been buying books. So I think looking into the second half of the year, I really want to try to lock down on book buying and stop buying books until I can make a lot more of a dent into my physical TBR and potentially unhaul some books that just aren't for me or aren't really amazing books that I want to have on my shelves. But I feel like that's kind of my cliche answer. And then I do have some books that were not on my 25 for 2025 that I really want to read before the end of the year. So I'd love to talk a little bit about those. And I grabbed a few of the ones that were here on my shelf. So I have been trying to get a lot more into translated literature this year, and that has also come along with picking up some works by Murakami. And so this is one that I have on my physical TBR that I haven't read yet, and so it's really a big goal of mine to read more translated literature, and especially Murakami, before the end of the year, because this is a direction that I've really been enjoying my reading going in terms of broadening my horizons, and I definitely want to keep up that momentum and read some authors that are really highly acclaimed and frequently talked about in literature spaces that I haven't read yet. So I would say that that's definitely toward the top of my list. I also recently hauled a few more Toni Morrison books. So I've talked about reading Beloved previously on this channel, and unfortunately I didn't get to Beloved the month that I had hoped to read it, but I went ahead and picked up some more Toni Morrison. So I did get a new copy of Beloved, which I feel a little guilty about because I got my other one secondhand, but I really wanted all of my Toni Morrison books to match. And I do already have The Bluest Eye and The Song of Solomon because I have read those previously. I actually read those in high school, and I really want to read more of Toni Morrison's work. So I picked up Sula, Beloved, and Jazz, and there are a couple more works by Toni Morrison that I would like to add to this collection, but I want to start by reading these and then I will expand on that. But that is definitely a goal of mine, to read a lot more of Morrison's work before the end of the year. Another goal of mine before the end of 2025 is really just to get through my Kindle Unlimited TBR. I love having Kindle Unlimited available as a service, but I think I have a really bad habit of saving books that I'm interested in on my Kindle Unlimited shelf, because you can have up to 20 books, and then really not getting back to them to read them quickly. So just a couple of honorable mentions from my Kindle Unlimited shelf. I really want to read Glow of the Everflame, which is the second book in that series. I enjoyed the first book and it was a really quick and easy fantasy read, and so I really want to see where that goes. Another book on my Kindle Unlimited shelf that I've seen several people talk about and recommend is Gideon the Ninth. So I really, really want to get into that one. I think specifically Plant-Based Bride or Elizabeth has talked about that one, and I generally really align with her reading recommendations, so I'm very excited to read that one. And then a couple of books that I feel honestly a little ashamed that I haven't gotten to yet are The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin and The Three Body Problem. Those are both books that I've had on my Kindle Unlimited shelf for a really long time, and I definitely want to finish those. So I'm actually thinking about doing a Clear My Kindle Unlimited TBR video where I try to read as many books that I have on that Kindle Unlimited shelf as possible. So if that's something you're interested in seeing, definitely let me know. But with that being said, that brings us to the end of our mid-year book freakout tag. Honestly, this was a lot of fun, and I feel like I need to spend a little more time reflecting on what I have read so far, because now that I'm to the point where I've read over 80 books this year, I do feel like it's getting a little muddled for me. Not when I think about each individual book, when I actually reflect on them, but just in terms of when did I read that? What did I rate that? What were my favorite things about it? I think just at a glance, it's a little harder to remember those things because I am reading so much. But I really want to do better about that and really take my time to reflect on my reads. So I would definitely be okay with it if my reading pace slows down a little bit for the end of the year. but I continue to really experience the books and have fun memories from them, as opposed to just enjoying it while I'm reading it and then kind of forgetting it when I'm done. But that being said, I would love to hear about your reading so far this year. How many books have you read? What are you most excited about? Please share all of that with me below in the comments. And I am so appreciative that you were here for this video and for my mid-year update today. So I will see you soon on the new upload schedule. And thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Bye!